I've done here is I've written out paragraph 1 in the form of splitting up the points, the explains and the examples. So the first point here, now we're always going to start with an argument for, so an argument that agrees with this, okay? So if that isn't too clear, this one agrees with the quote. And this one, it's just a different side of the argument. So it might disagree, it might just be a different idea. So it doesn't have to be completely opposite or disagree. It might say, well, actually, we've got a different point here. So the point here is protesting is a human right, and people should be allowed to demonstrate their point of view. Okay? So we're making a point. We're explaining it by saying protesting gives people the chance to tell others what their view is and to explain their ideas. For example, in the Bible, Jesus protested against the way people were treated in the temple, which is a place meant for God. So again, we've got here a really nice argument. What we would then do, and along this line, if I just change this for a minute, is always the word however. Okay? Because if we were writing this out, this is all across here one paragraph. But I'm going to put a however, because I'm going to show that there's a different point to this one. However, protesting can become violent quickly as people are angry. This can cause injury and suffering to innocent people. I'm going to link back to this human right idea. So although it is a human right to protest, it's also a human right to be free from harm, which some people will not be. I've then put, for example, in London in 2011, there were riots over the death of Mark Duggan. It caused long-term damage to areas and injury to people. So that's our example, and it's a real-life one. So it doesn't have to be an example from religion like this one. It can just be an example from real life. What we're going to do next is we're going to have a go at filling out line 2. Now, you might have already filled this out last lesson. That is absolutely fine. But it might be that I write something down here that you think, oh, that's quite good. Of course you can use it. So I'm going to start this second paragraph talking about how protesting can make a real change in people's lives. So protesting can make a real change in people's lives. That's my point. What I then need to do is explain it. So I'm going to put peaceful protests can get governments to change laws. Now, in lesson we learnt about Martin Luther King. So, for example, Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement got the laws changed. Remember, they got the laws changed about how black people were treated. So that's our paragraph 1. That's our for argument in paragraph 2. My apologies. However, we're going to put protesting can lead to people destroying property and objects. Now here we're talking about riots. So remember, it's a protest that gets violent. So we're going to put protests can become violent with people looting and throwing bricks, or even setting fire. Now, an example we did talk about in lesson was the Southport riots last year. So we can put in 2024, the Southport riots caused a lot of damage to communities. So what we've then got is our second paragraph. We've got our for and we've got our different side of the argument. Now, the last paragraph is often our own opinion. However, what we can do is think about what our own opinion might look like. So I'm going to do one here, and you can either use it as your own opinion, or you can come up with your own idea. So I'm going to put protesting can raise awareness and help reach a compromise. For example, well, no, not for example, we need to explain this. So it can make everyone aware and come to an agreement. Because it might sometimes just be that the two sides just don't fully understand each other. For example, the teachers' strike for fairer pay. So it might be that some people are like, they didn't realise that actually maybe teachers weren't paid enough, or they didn't realise how much work they had to do. But equally, they had to come to a compromise. So it wasn't a, well, teachers should get paid £1 million a week, be lovely, but it's more a, let's compromise, let's talk it through and see what we can come up with. However, protests can disrupt lives. People's lives. They can cause harm without realising it. For example, just stop oil protests. Stopping people getting to hospital. Oh, can't see that. There you go. So, what we've got there now is 3 really good paragraphs planned out. And all we've got to do is start to write them out in proper paragraphs. So to do that, we'd write this one, and this one, so our 3 at the top there, one after the other. We'd then put however, and then write these 3. Now we might have to put here, for example, in London in 2011. So we might have to add a couple of words, but what we've got here now is a really good plan to help us answer the challenge question.